Age of Sigmar 4th edition is just around the corner, and I, for one, am very much looking forward to it. Despite having only played one game of Age of Sigmar ever, and that game went terribly for me, it was still a lot of fun, and it's similar enough to 40k that I can get into it quite easily. The changes that are being made for Age of Sigmar 4th edition are very much in the same vein as 10th edition 40k, which I, for one, am actually enjoying quite a lot. Things like objective control and reducing the complexity of the weapon choices makes the game a lot easier, it's a lot more streamlined, and flows a little bit better. While some might argue that the reduced complexity does take away some of the depth of the game, I find as someone who doesn't play that much, or is quite a beginner, it is quite nice to have a simplified but not simple rule set, to use Games Workshop's term. However, there is one announced change for Age of Sigmar 4th edition which I just don't understand. And it's such a minor change, but it's also a change that doesn't change enough. And that probably sounds very confusing, so let me explain. This change is around wounds. If you've played 40k, then you understand the concept of wounds. That's basically the health of a model, and that's the same in Age of Sigmar. However, there is a key difference between Age of Sigmar and 40k. In 40k, as a model takes damage, you mark the number of wounds that that model has remaining. So for example, a 12 wound model that has taken 4 damage, you mark having 8 remaining. In Age of Sigmar, you count upwards. You mark the amount of damage that that model has taken, and the tables in Age of Sigmar 3rd edition show the amount of damage you take. It's like being bracketed 40k. But rather than it being you have X amount of health left, it's you've taken X amount of damage. Now, there's pros and cons to this approach, and as someone who comes from 40k, I definitely prefer counting down. For one, it's a lot easier to understand how much health an enemy model has left. By counting the amount of damage you've taken and going upwards, you have to ask how much health is remaining, because you've done a certain amount of damage, sure, but you don't know how much health is left to do. And the other reason that I think it's probably better to count down is because that's how every single other entertainment media has been doing health since the beginning of time. Video games, tabletop RPGs, everything uses a health bar. You have X amount of health, and as you take damage, the health bar goes down to 0. Now, for Age of Sigmar, to be fair, there are places where you actually increase the number of wounds on a model, and by counting the amount of damage it's taken, that means you're never going to unbracket yourself, because rather than gaining health back, you're gaining additional max health, but you still have taken the same amount of damage. Now, in 4th edition, they've done a very slight change here. They've changed the word wounds to health, and in the article where they show this change, they actually have a justification which says many newer players who hear that a model has 10 wounds might assume that it's in pretty poor shape, rather than fighting fit. I guess their justification for the name change is that some players might see wounds as like, oh, that model has 10 wounds, it's been wounded and injured 10 times, or has 10 scars or something. I don't quite get that, but sure, let's go with that. Let's go with their justification. So now each model has health. So, why do you still have the concept of damage points? This was the opportunity to standardize this across 40k and Age of Sigmar. You've changed the name to health, making people think of a health bar, but yet you still use counting upwards and damage points. Why are we still counting up? There's so many instances where it's either 10 or 15 damage points, but the amount of health that it actually has is unknown. There's no standardization. It's not like it's 50% health, which might have actually helped. It's just, it's 10, 15, there's a number, and then the actual health could be 20 or 30 higher in some cases. But the main problem I have is you went through this justification to change the word wounds to health, and yet you don't take advantage of it by still doing damage points and counting upwards. However many instances where being unbracketed in this situation by adding health would come up, doesn't feel like there's that many, because you still have a heal keyword. And the heal keyword, I assume, could unbracket you because you'd be removing damage points. You've gone through the effort of changing the word, but you haven't gone through the effort of actually doing anything to make this more in line with, you know, everything else that has come before it. Or even just more basically, 40k. And I know that you don't want to have everything standardized because it should feel like the same game, but it's still useful to get people from 40k to Age of Sigmar and not have to have everyone kind of rewire how they count up or down. And I think that's why this change is so baffling to me and why it bothers me so much. It's because you had the opportunity. You were one step away. You called it health. You made it a health bar, but you still kept damage points. Just fix it. Just fix the entirety of your game just before it releases, please, because I am slightly confused with numbers. I'm sure there are Age of Sigmar veterans out there who have good justifications for why you do count up, and I'd love to hear them, to be honest. I'd love to hear those instances where counting up does make a lot more sense. But from a general kind of population, and for people wanting to come over from 40k, counting down, and again, to me, just makes so much more sense. Easier to see what's going on. You don't have to work out or find out how much health something has max to be able to work out how much damage it's got left. It's just nicer. And I think this argument rings more true because Games Workshop's own justification for changing the word wounds to health is because of confusion for newer players. Anyway, that's my stupid rant over. The rest of Age of Sigmar looks great. And to be honest, I'm definitely going to be picking up the box set when it comes out because it's full of rats. If you have any other thoughts about this or any thoughts about counting up or down, just counting in general, how high can you count? Leave your number in the comments, I guess, and I'll see you next time. Thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy this, go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, all the good YouTube stuff. I'll see you next time. Thank you very much for watching.